Good evening and welcome along to this week's Women's Football Chat. My name is Chris Gadsby. I'm here every week bringing you the very latest from the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League and the 72 teams that make up its 6 divisions. Bit of a quieter week this week. It was always going to be. There was a lot of County Cup going on over the past 7 days, and with the FA Cup as well, that meant there were very few league fixtures. So there's not an awful lot that we need to go through. But we do have some news, and the news is just after the turn of the year, the FSA have released their 25-26 FAWNL supporters guide. So if you follow an FAWNL club, which I suspect you do if you're watching this show, then you will be able to download that for free, and it will give you a host of information. It's particularly useful for visiting fans, gives you kind of ground locations, transport links, that sort of thing. But even if you're a home fan, it gives you a few links to the likes of supporters clubs for each of the teams that have them. So it should be a really useful, I know it is a really useful guide, but if you haven't already got it, then do make sure you go and download it. Now I will be using it just to make sure and fine tune anything that's in that Football Manager database, because the teams kind of existed in the original Football Manager database, but only just to make sure that like the FA Cup could work. It's only through kind of that database that I've kind of added them in as playable leagues. I'm just going to go through, double check all of those are working properly to make sure the away kits, that sort of thing, are all right. But yes, if you go on the We Are the FSA on X, you can find a link to the guide from that. Right. Let's go through, as I said, not many results to go through over the past 7 days because the vast majority of them were in the County Cup, which we don't cover. It would take all year. So what we'll do is go through and start with the fourth round of the Women's FA Cup. So these are the selected results from the fourth round of the Women's FA Cup. I say selected, by which I mean these are the ties that involved FAWNL sides. For anyone who's followed the show for a while, you will know that the Women's Football Chat covers the FA Cup whilst there is an FAWNL side or below in it. Once we get into like the quarterfinals and it's all full of Super League teams, that's when we let our kind of bigger national covers get hold of the FA Cup. We just like to focus on the early rounds, and well, it was kind of exactly what we expected for the FAWNL sides, if we're honest. They were coming up against Super League sides, WSL2 sides, and we hoped, but we weren't really expecting them to win. And the result is they didn't win. West Brom champion lost 5-0 to Everton. We covered that last week. They had that Thursday night game. Manchester City beat AFC Bournemouth by 6-0. We do, though, have 2 sides still in the FA Cup moving forward. Oxford United beating Middlesbrough by 3-1. Some very late goals. It was quite a turnaround for Oxford. Rebecca May Ferguson had Middlesbrough in front on the road, but an 85th minute goal for Maisie Barker, a 90th minute goal for Reba Castley, and a 94th minute goal for Holly Manders turns that game around for Oxford United, and they won by 3-1. The overall FAWNL tie, Chatham Town beating York City by 3-0. Ellie Jeffkins in the 11th minute, Amelia Woodgate 31st and 41st minute. So Chatham Town through into the 5th round, which is essentially the round of 16. Manchester United beating Burnley by 5-0. London Bees losing to Liverpool by 6-0. Charlton Athletic beating Swindon Town 10-0. Hull City 2, Birmingham City 6. Sophie Hayward and Ellie Tanser with the goals for Hull City, who did a very strong showing against a WSL2 side in Birmingham City, scoring a couple of goals there. So we have 2 sides left in the FA Cup. It's Oxford United and it's Chatham Town. And they have got, as I said, draws in the fifth round. Oxford United at home to Charlton Athletic, who have just beaten Swindon 10-0. Chatham Town away at Birmingham City. I think it's unlikely that either side will make it through with the best will in the world into the quarterfinals, but if they do, that will be absolutely fabulous for them. So that is, the FA Cup pretty much done and dusted on this show for another year. As I said, just those two ties that we'll look at further down the line before round 5. Let's go into the league then. Northern Premier Division, Derby County beating Loughborough Lightning in that big game towards the bottom by a 0-0. Olivia Edwards in the 53rd minute. Stoke City 4, Halifax 0. Shannon Stamps, Evie Priestley, Lucia Molinari and Millie Round with the goals for Stoke City as they have a fairly comfortable win. What it means for the league table, it's a big 3 points for Derby County. It's moved them now 5 clear of the bottom 2. Sporting Cowser, of course, didn't play. They've got a couple of games in hand, so could pull themselves out with a couple of wins, but they're 5 points from safety now, as it's gone from 10 point for the team in 10th now to 11 points with Halifax down there after that loss to Stoke. Stoke remain in 4th with the win. They are still a long way away. They're 12 points behind Burnley in that playoff spot. I think Burnley and Wolves realistically are probably going to have those 2 spots. Rugby have the opportunity still to do something about it, but Stoke City in 4th. I think you're relying on realistically 13 points to make up in the last 10 games over Burnley because of that goal difference as well. So to ask Burnley to kind of lose 5 out of their last 10 games in order to make that up might be a bit of a tall order for Stoke. But they do have that win against Halifax. No games in the Southern Premier Division. Division 1 Midlands. Kidderminster Harriers 1, Sutton Coldfield Town 3. Bethany Grady with the 1 for Kidderminster, but 2 for Eva Cassidy and 1 for Chloe Dan meant Sutton Coldfield Town got the 3 points. Peterborough United 3-0 winners over Notts County. Jessica Razu with 2 and Hayley James with 1. And then Leafield Athletic narrowly beating Northampton Town by a 0-0 in this one with an own goal after just half an hour. What that means for the Midlands table, Peterborough United then 2 points off the top, but they have 2 games in hand. Leaford Athletic with that win over Northampton Town, because Sheffield and Barnsley Women's didn't play. Leaford Athletic are up to 3rd. They have 2 games in hand on Boldmere St Michael's, but the 2 games in hand would only put them to 30. So they can't actually catch Boldmere or Peterborough United with their games in hand. Worcester City remain in 6th. Again, they didn't play. Sutton Coldfield Town with their victory over Kidderminster Harriers are up to 7th. Notts County lost. They dropped down to 8th. And towards the bottom, it was really Kidderminster Harriers and Northampton Town both had the opportunity to pull away from the bottom 2. Neither of them could take it with 2 losses, so they remain as they are. Kidderminster Harriers 1 point above the relegation zone. And finally, Division 1 North, 2 games in this one. Doncaster Rovers Bells losing to Huddersfield Town by a 0-0. Louise Biggins with the only goal of that game on the 13th minute. Durham Sestra 2, Stockport County 1. 2 in 3 minutes for Durham Sestra in the second half. Faydale 66, Emily Hutchinson 68 put them firmly in the driving seat. A consolation for Jess Battle in the 95th minute, got one back for Stockport County, but they could not get an equaliser. What that means for the table, Huddersfield Town are top. Yes, they have played a game more than Leeds United, but they are top of the table even with that 2-point deduction. Leeds United and Wythenshawe drop down to 2nd and 3rd. Cheadle are 4th. Stockport after that loss are 5th still, but there's still only 4 points separating the top 5, although Stockport have played 13. Leeds and Cheadle in particular have only played 11. Durham Sestra with the win up to 7th. They climb above Norton and Stockton Ancients. Doncaster Rovers Bells remain in the relegation zone after that defeat to Huddersfield Town. Into the fixtures then coming up this week, a fairly busy week if everything goes to plan. Northern Premier Division, 3 games. Wolves, though, not in action. So Burnley have the chance with a win over Sporting Cowser to go back to the top of the table, albeit they will have played a game more than Wolves. Liverpool Feds against Hull City, 2 teams in the mid-table. They're Hull in 7th, Liverpool Feds in 8th. Hull do have a game in hand on Feds. They could climb a couple of places, could Hull, with West Brom and Middlesbrough not in action. So if they do get the win, they would go into the top half of the table. Liverpool Feds, equally, with a win, would go up to 5th. Rugby Borough in 3rd against Loughborough Lightning down in 11th. Rugby, again, have an opportunity to close the gap on Wolves because Wolves aren't playing, but if they win, they will still be 5 points behind Wolves, and Wolves will have a game in hand. So games are starting to run out, I think, a little bit for Rugby Borough. They will still, of course, have the games against Wolves and Burnley, which will be must-win games for them. But elsewhere, it's just starting to run out a little bit, you feel, as we head now towards the end of January. It's incredible, I think, with the way that the fixture schedule is, because we seem to cram fixtures into the first bit of the season, and we have, we're at like 9, 10, 11 games played kind of end of October, mid-November, and then we get to like nearly the end of January now, and some teams are still on 11 games played, and 12, 13 is like the match you go. We've still got 9 games to fit in now in the last few months of the season. So, there is still plenty of time, and obviously the cups kind of have wound down now. We've got semi-finals, cup and plate. There's only 2 teams left in the FA Cup. It's just county cups that kind of get in the way now. Hopefully we're past the worst of the weather, so we should be able to start things ticking along quite nicely again. But yeah, Burnley, opportunity to go back top. Rugby Borough could close the gap on Wolves, but it's going to be difficult again. Loughborough Lightning, if they win against Rugby Borough, would climb out of the relegation zone, but that is going to be a tough ask, particularly on the road. Southern Premier Division, 5 games taking place this weekend. Billericay Town against Plymouth Argyle, that is 12th against 3rd. Oxford United, who are up to 5th now, against Cheltenham Town, who are in 6th. So a big mid-table battle there. Watford, 2nd against AFC Wimbledon, down in 11th. Hashtag United against Gwalior United, 9th against 10th. So another big game towards the bottom. Real Bedford against Lewis, 4th against 8th. That one I've seen this morning has a change of venue and a change of kickoff time. That's now not starting till 5:30 in the evening, which is very late. But so yeah, keep your eye on that one. Bournemouth not playing there in cup action, which means that Watford have the chance to go back to the top of the table. But granted, if they do that, they will have played 2 games more than Bournemouth, and they will only be 2 points ahead of them. Division 1 Midlands, we have a full programme in Division 1 Midlands. Barnsley Women's against Leafield Athletic, 5th against 3rd. Kidderminster Harriers against Stourbridge, that's a huge game towards the bottom, 10th against 9th. Northampton Town against Lincoln United, another big game towards the bottom, 11th against 12th. Sheffield against Peterborough United, 4th against 2nd. Sutton Coldfield Town against Notts County, 7th against 8th. And Worcester City against Boldmere St Michael's, 6th against 1st. So Division 1 Midlands this weekend, 11th for playing 12th, 9th for playing 10th, and 7th for playing 8th. So the bottom half are all playing each other. This could be a really significant weekend in Division 1 Midlands when you look at those fixtures. Lincoln United, now, if things were to go against Lincoln United this weekend, they could find themselves 11 points away from safety, and then with 10 games to go, is the writing on the wall for Lincoln? You'd probably say it is, and probably has been for a while, in honesty. But with that in mind, it's an opportunity for some of the other teams. If Stourbridge get the win away at Kidderminster Harriers, that could put them 6 points clear of the relegation zone. At worst, they're going to be 5 points clear of the relegation zone if they get the win. A win for Sutton Coldfield Town or Notts County. If Northampton Town lose, that's probably going to end up being enough for them. And then they can maybe relax a little bit and just kind of not have so much pressure on getting the results every single week to try and keep themselves away from that. If Notts County move to 16 points, Northampton Town on 8 points, again, that you could feel that's probably enough for Notts County. Sutton Coldfield Town, if they were to go 10 clear, for example, that would almost certainly be enough for them, 18 points to stay in the division. So it could be a really important weekend in Division 1 Midlands. Division 1 North, there is not as many games taking place. That is primarily because of the Cup. There are 3 teams in Division 1 North taking part in Cup competitions this weekend. But Chester Street Town against York City, 9th against 10th. Leeds United, Wythenshawe, 2nd against 3rd. That feels huge. That really feels significant at the top. Stockport County in 5th against Blackburn Rovers in 12th. So teams towards the bottom, Blackburn Rovers are in action, but they will remain bottom whatever happens. Chester Street Town, York City, again, similar to what we've just been mentioning in Division 1 Midlands. If Chester Street Town get the win, that would move them to be 9 points clear of Doncaster Rovers Bells in 11th. It might not quite be enough yet. My gut instinct says it would be, but kind of it's just on that cusp, isn't it, of being okay or not being okay. York City, I think a win would do them the world of good, particularly this being their game in hand over Doncaster Rovers Bells. If they could move themselves 4 points clear and essentially 2 games clear of Doncaster Rovers Bells, that would be really significant for them. Towards the top, Leeds United against Wythenshawe. This is Leeds United's game in hand over Huddersfield Town. Win it, they'll go 3 points clear. Lose it, and Wythenshawe will be top of the table. Granted, they will have then played 1 game more than Huddersfield Town, and they will be 2 points clear of Leeds United, but Leeds will have a game in hand on them. So yeah, again, it's one of those games. It's not necessarily season defining because the top of Division 1 North is so close, but if Wythenshawe, for example, lose that game and then they drop 4 points behind Leeds and Leeds have got a game in hand, you start to have to then rely on them dropping points and other teams doing you a favour and making sure you've done your job week in, week out, and it just becomes that little bit more difficult for you. Division 1 South East, full programme in South East. MK Dons against Actonians, 8th against 6th. Cambridge United against AFC Sudbury, 7th against 11th. Chesham United against Queen's Park Rangers, 12th against 5th. Fulham against Dulwich Hamlet, 1st against 10th. Luton Town against Norwich City, 9th against 2nd. Chatham Town against London Bees, 4th against 3rd. So that's a big one towards the top. Chatham Town with 2 games in hand on London Bees, 7 points behind and get the win, 4 points behind them, still with 2 games in hand. They will then have it in their own hands to go up into 3rd. Norwich City away at Luton, who are down in 9th. Fulham home to Dulwich Hamlet, who are down in 10th. So in theory, easier in quote marks for the top 2. They could just go away again. If London Bees and Chatham Town, for example, draw with each other, I think particularly if Chatham Town either they draw or get the win, for them the gap you would think in theory to be 10 points between 2nd and 3rd. That then you go, well, those are definitely going to be the top 2. It's just in what order. And then you look at it and you go, well, realistically, the way they've been playing, it's going to be, let's win every other game because that's what they seem to do. That game between the 2 of them, which is on the 8th of February, could well be the one to decide who goes up into the Southern Premier Division automatically and who has to take on the 2nd place side in South West for that spot in the Southern Premier Division. That's where, Chesham against Queen's Park Rangers will be tough for the team down in 12th. They're 9 points away from safety already. AFC Sudbury are away at Cambridge United, who are 7th. There's an 8-point gap between them. Dulwich Hamlet we've already spoken about to Fulham. Luton we've already spoken about at Norwich. And then MK Dons, they're already 6 points clear, although Sudbury have 2 games in hand, so who really knows what's going to happen there as well. I think the long cup runs for teams in South East coupled with some of the weather, has really left it. You know, there's a 3-game disparity between Luton Town in 9th and MK Dons in 8th, and there's only 1 point between them. So it's not necessarily as easy to be able to tell who is where in Division 1 South East, because there are just so many variables still in that league. Division 1 South West, there are 5 games at the weekend, then 1 on Tuesday, 1 next Thursday. So plenty to go through in South West. Abingdon United against Moneyfields, 5th against 1st. Bristol Rovers take on Worthing, 3rd against 12th. Keynsham Town against Bournemouth Sports, 9th against 7th. Maidenhead United against Bridgewater United, 6th against 4th. Portishead Town against Ascot United, 11th against 10th. Let's focus on the weekends first before we go into the midweek games. Portishead against Ascot United, massive down towards the bottom. Winner of that one, if it's Ascot United, 5 points clear. If it's Portishead Town, they're out of the relegation zone. Really, really important game, that one. Maidenhead United against Bridgewater, 6th against 4th, kind of mid-table. Neither side going to threaten towards the top, or at the moment look like they're going to get pulled into towards the bottom. Kind of the same with Keynsham Town and Bournemouth Sports, although Keynsham Town, a win would really do them a lot of favours to move 6 points clear. Bournemouth Sports on 16, yeah, probably okay, but with 9 games to go for Portishead and Worthing, but yeah, they would fancy a few more points. Keynsham Town definitely would like a few more points. Bristol Rovers in 3rd against Worthing at the bottom of the table. That's going to be difficult for Worthing. Bristol Rovers, I mean, they're 9 points behind Moneyfields. Yes, they've got a game in hand, so let's call that 6. But they're 5 behind Swindon, and Swindon have got 2 in hand. Abingdon United in 5th against Moneyfields, top of the table. Abingdon, the sort of side you feel like that maybe could cause Moneyfields a little bit of trouble if Moneyfields aren't careful. But you would fancy Moneyfields to win that game. But it's towards the bottom that everything is key this week, because Ascot United are playing 11th place Portishead Town on Sunday, then 12th place Worthing on Tuesday. Ascot United have the opportunity, if they win both their games, to be on 15 points by the end of the week, to be 8 points clear of the relegation zone, and that would do them the world of good. It could look very, very different South West by the end of next week if Portishead Town and Worthing get some wins. If Keynsham Town win and Ascot United get 6 points, then Portishead and Worthing would be 6 points away from safety. And that is quite a gap when you've only got 8 games to go. So, yeah, this feels like it could be a really pivotal week. Then on Thursday, Bridgewater United 4th against Swindon Town 2nd. Swindon Town, it's one of their games in hand over Moneyfields. They're 4 points behind. They've got 3 games in hand. They're perfect so far this season. The only blemish on their record is being out of the FA Cup. That's it. And when you're losing to a WSL2 side when you're in Tier 4, there's no shame in that whatsoever. So Swindon Town will look to keep marching on. Now, mentioned the Cup a few times. This is the kind of do-up, really, of the Plate and the Cup quarterfinals. Wolves against West Brom, Swindon against Bournemouth in the Cup this weekend. Cheadle against Durham Sestra, Halifax against Chorley in the Plate. These are the ties that should have been played 2 weeks ago, then couldn't be played last week because the FA Cup took priority. So they're being played this week, which is why some of the leagues are missing some games from the full programme this weekend. So the final 2 FAWNL Cup games, and of course it's Wolves or West Brom against Swindon or Bournemouth in the draw, and then Cheadle and Durham Sestra against Halifax or Chorley, and again it's those in the draw. So again, these games, they're quarterfinals. You've got final 4 on the line. So close now to that final and maybe that trophy. They'll be giving it absolutely everything, but it does mean there'll be more kind of games in hand and some movement in the league, because some of these big players, particularly the likes of Wolves, Cheadle Town Stingers, for example, aren't playing in their leagues this weekend. And that's it. So next week there'll be it'll be a much longer show. There'll be much more to go through, and it will be really interesting to see what's happened over the course of the next 7 days or so. Next week's show will also be on a Friday because of that Bridgewater United against Swindon Town game. In the meantime, at W Football Chat for all of the very latest from the third and fourth tiers. We'll get all of the results and tables out as quickly as we can on Sunday evening. Thank you very much for watching. Again, don't forget, if you are interested in the Football Manager database, you can find a link to it pinned to the top of our WFC profile on X. It's also on Steam as well, and you can take a 7th tier side all the way to the WSL if you want to. We will still be working on getting down to tier 12, but it is an awful lot of work, and also have to go out to work alongside doing all of this. But thank you very much for watching this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. I'll be back next Friday with all of the very latest. Goodbye.